So I bought my dogs a Jeep, and in the process came across a classic case of mechanical misdiagnosis. I'll get to that in a minute. So here's the thing. Whenever we have to leave here for more than a couple of hours, there's no home team. We got to take the dogs with us. So we've been using the carry van, and it works great as far as I'm concerned, but it's a bit of a torture chamber for the puppies, because there's no windows back there. It gets hot, it's loud, it's not really comfortable. And if I made it comfortable, enough to road trip for them, then I'd lose the utility as a box truck, and I don't want to do that. So I needed to get something more conducive to that sort of thing. So we did that thing on Debbie's Volare wagon when we met Gene Winfield the other day. That'd be perfect, right? But it's another project, and I don't need any more projects. And then, so we're thinking, well, okay, let's find a Jeep something, right? So Grand Wagoneer, right? I always loved Grand Wagoneers. So we start hunting there. We actually went to look at one. And you don't just buy a Grand Wagoneer, you become part of a Grand Wagoneer society, okay? It's nothing simple. It's a project, right? Jeep Cherokees. Perfect. Actually, years ago, I used to flip Jeeps. I did it for a little while. And I had one that was one of the vehicles I always regretted getting rid of. And it was a two-wheel drive, 4-liter Cherokee 5-speed, right? This thing was a hoot. Let me tell you something. When you take the weight, the 250 pounds or so of transfer case and front drive shaft and differential and everything else, and you take it out of there, these things become very light and lively, right? And you couple it up with a stick, and I'm telling you, it's a fun vehicle. Always regretted getting rid of that one. So we're going through Facebook Marketplace, and this thing pops up, 2-wheel drive. I'm like, oh, 2-wheel drive. It's an automatic, but that can be fixed down the road. I'm going to grab that. So here's the story with this thing. They thought it needed a head gasket. Actually, they went through the whole cooling system on this thing. It's got a new radiator, thermostat, hoses, fan, like name it, right? And they did everything they could to the cooling system. And I guess they finally said, it needs a head gasket. So they pulled the head, they put a head gasket in it. And then when they put it back together again, it was making a racket, all right? So I go and look at this truck, and I says, all right, well, somehow or another the motor is pooched, right? No big deal. It's a 4-liter. It's an afternoon's worth of, okay, it's 2 days worth of like pulling it, freshening it, put it back in. I'll take it. So I paid $800 for the truck. So I get it back to the shop. I pop the valve cover off, and as it turns out, they had over-tightened one of the rocker hold-down bolts. It snapped, and it kicked 2 push rods out. It broke bolt here. This rocker was just flopping around, and it had spit this push rod out. I don't know what the other push rod is. It's here someplace. Anyway, the other push rod was all bent up and stuck in there. It looks like someone had just put a head on this thing, and I guess they might have over-tightened this to the point that it snapped the bolt. I don't know. But it looks to me now like this motor is going to be all right. So I run over to pull apart. I grab push rods and bolts and hardware, everything else I need to put it back together again. And fire it up this morning, take it for a ride. This thing is primo, it's perfect. I got the AC blowing cold, everything's, the check engine light is off, temperature gauge is right in the center, and I drive it for, let's say, 10 miles or so, 15 miles. I come back here to the house. I'm like, Kat, you got to take this thing for a ride. This thing's fantastic. So she's driving it, I'm sitting in the passenger seat, and after a while she's saying, it feels funny when I hit the brakes. Okay. So we switched driving again, and now I'm driving it, and I'm starting to feel it's like holding back. And I'm looking at the temperature gauge, and the temperature gauge is creeping up and creeping up and creeping up. The original problem with this truck, the overheating of it, was classic misdiagnosis. After a little while, let's say 15, 20 miles of driving, or something, depending on the circumstance, but after a while's worth of driving, the front caliper will get hot, and it'll start to stick. And then the hotter it gets, the more it sticks. Until eventually the motor is fighting such a load, it starts to run hot, it'll overheat. And then now you let this thing sit and cool off, the caliper cools off, it relaxes, it goes back to normal, but you still get this truck that you don't know what's going on, it's overheating. That's what happened with this. So we scored, paid $800 for it. Motor's perfect, runs like a top, everything is, transmission, rear end, suspension, everything is perfect. I've got a stuck caliper on the front over here, so I'll throw a pair of calipers on it today. And my puppies have an ultimate road trip vehicle. So let me show you what I got here for my 800 bucks. Right, it's clean, power everything, and everything works, all the windows, and this seat, I gotta pull the seat out, it's a little sticky on the tracks there. I got a Jeep key fob. Styling hard with the Jeep. Yeah, back seat is nice, and of course that folds down. I got to screw around with the passenger side rear door window. That's why the switch is just hanging out there right now. It works from the door, but doesn't work from over there. It's straight. It has no rust. Needs a paint job. It's already had at least one repaint, a bad repaint at that. But it's a simple scuff and shoot, and this is the worst of it, all here. So I'm not going to stress that. I'll probably in the fall, the weather changes, I'll give it a quick scuff, nice coat of red paint, and I got to throw some rubber on it. Tires a little they've seen better days. But yeah, I love this thing. And let me show you under the hood. Not that you have never seen a 4-liter Jeep. But I do have a thing for these motors. And here, see how hot it's running? I just parked this. And you can see it's still steaming now. Because the brake is like locked up hard. I gotta let this thing sit and cool off completely. But the nice thing about these engines, oh, this heater hose is leaking too. Because there's no, oh, look at this. And I just noticed this now, there's no clamp on the heater hose. I didn't remove the hoses when I pulled the valve cover off. I just pulled them out of the way. And now I'm seeing here that there's no clamp on the thing, so we got to fix that. But the nice thing about these 4 liters is that the lineage of this engine goes back to, you know, the great AMC motors of the 60s and the 70s. So, you know, a simple distributor swap, a carbureted intake manifold, and I can do away with all of this stuff. Swap it over to 5-speed, and I've got my complete analog, you know what I mean, like my analog fetish thing. I can accomplish that pretty easily with this. But I'm not going to do anything with that for the time being. I'm going to leave it the way it is and just, you know, road trip it. So that's it. You guys are probably going to end up seeing a bunch of Jeep content now on the channel, which is good because we need to spread it out a little bit. My kid wants a CJ, so we may do that too. So that's it. Figure, let me just show you the new toy and a classic episode of mechanical misdiagnosis. I'll see you tomorrow.